Most scary stories end when the lights come on. Mine got worse in daylight. I drive delivery routes for a living. Boring job, boring life. But someone out there decided my route was interesting enough to follow. Every single night. And when I finally went to the police, they looked me dead in the eye and basically told me to figure it out myself. I don't even know how to start this the right way. My name is Tavish Oleander. Yeah, my mom had a thing for weird names. I'm 26. I live in Columbus, Ohio. And up until about 8 months ago, I was just a regular delivery driver doing evening routes in the Westerville area. Nothing special about me. I drove, I dropped packages, I went home, I ate cereal at midnight. That was my life. It started on a rainy Tuesday when I picked up my first batch of packages for the evening route on Pine Ridge Drive. I remember stopping at a BP station to grab a cold can of Red Bull because it was going to be a long one. Wet roads, 12 stops minimum. I remember the cashier had a broken fingernail and it was painted bright orange. Weird detail, I know, but I remember it. The first week was fine, normal. Then little things started happening. I found a signature on a drop-off receipt. My handwriting. Except I hadn't signed anything at that address yet. I just stood there staring at it for like a full minute thinking maybe I was losing it. I told myself I must have signed it earlier and forgot. Moved on. Then a package. Half hidden behind a potted fern outside a house on Delwood Avenue. I never put it there. I always leave stuff at the door. Always. The homeowner said they didn't put it there either. I filed a note on my app and kept going, but something in my gut just sat wrong with that. 2 weeks in, Dispatch started texting me about missing scans, addresses I 100% visited. My GPS log matched every stop. But homeowners were saying they never got their stuff. One lady called in and said she watched her doorbell camera all day and nobody came. But I was there. I have the timestamps. So I bought a cheap dash cam, like $40 from Walmart, clipped it to my windshield. 3 nights later, I noticed a white sedan parked 5 houses down on almost every single street I delivered on. First time I thought it was a coincidence. Second time I thought, okay, that's weird. Third time I watched the driver get out and walk slowly down the same sidewalk I'd just walked. Same direction, same pace, just behind me. I called the non-emergency police line in Columbus. Guy on the phone was polite, but basically said there wasn't much they could do unless something actually happened. They reviewed my dash cam clips and said the footage was inconclusive. Too dark, too grainy. They weren't going to station anyone because no physical threat had been made. No assault, no direct contact. I get it, I guess. But it felt like being handed a wet paper towel and told to clean up a flood. The plates on that white sedan changed. I wrote them down every time. Different plates, swapped, and my dash cam kept having these weird gaps, like the file just stops and picks back up 5 minutes later. I don't know if it was a memory card issue or what, but it kept happening specifically during the moments where the sedan was closest to me. One afternoon in broad daylight, I saw the car parked near a Walgreens on Cleveland Avenue. I walked up to the window. The driver was this average-looking guy, maybe 40, brown jacket. He smiled at me like we were old friends and asked me if I knew how to get to Dublin Road. Calm, friendly, like he wasn't the same guy who'd been trailing me for 2 weeks. That's the part that messed me up most. Not that he was scary-looking, that he wasn't. My employer, Greylock Fulfillment Services, called me in for a meeting. A high-value return had gone unaccounted for. They used that phrase, unaccounted for. HR told me to be more careful going forward. That was it. I wanted to scream. Then the packages started showing up. Weeks-old deliveries appearing at neighbors' houses. And there were notes with them, written in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Not similar. Exactly like mine. I had to sit down when I first saw one. Just sat on a curb in Bexley and stared at the ground for a while. The only person who had ever seen my handwriting, on receipts, on dispatch forms, on anything, was the man who drove the white sedan, who now knew my shift schedule, who now somehow knew where my girlfriend Solène worked. She's a pharmacy tech at a CVS in Gahanna. She mentioned one night that a man in a brown jacket had come in asking weird questions about her schedule. She thought nothing of it. I thought about nothing else. I went back to the police twice more. Both times I could see them trying to find a reason to help that fit inside their paperwork. There was always plausible deniability on his end. Always a reason it could be coincidence. They kept their hands in their pockets, basically. That's when I stopped sleeping. Not because I was scared of the dark or whatever. I stopped sleeping because every time I closed my eyes, I'd start doing the math. How long he'd been watching. How much he already knew. How much effort something like that takes. And why. I never figured out the why. I still haven't. The white sedan hasn't been back in about 6 weeks now. But last Tuesday, Solène found a Red Bull can on our doorstep. Cold, like someone had just set it down. I took the late shift at a 24-hour corner store on Elm because rent was due. At 3:12 a.m., a man came in with a cardboard umbrella and a smell like 30 cigarettes. After that, small things changed. Doors, photos, and one 2-second blackout on CCTV made normal feel dangerous. My name is Jorvik Hale. I worked nights in Cleveland at that small store. The lights buzzed and the floorboards creaked when my cat ran. I liked the quiet. I liked having simple routines. He walked in at 3:12 a.m. The first night I noticed him. Cardboard umbrella. Smell like 30 cigarettes. He bought a caffeine tablet, a Diet Cola, and 2 pre-rolled cigarettes. Exact change. He smiled, but it was just a mouth. I told myself to stop staring. He came again. Same black hoodie, same order, same exact change. He started doing favors. He changed a parking lot bulb. He carried a shipment box from the back. He returned a lost wallet with the cash placed neatly and a note that read, "Untouched." It felt staged. Once Kazia's car alarm stopped and Leon blamed me for leaving the service door open. I checked the CCTV. There was a 2-second blackout the moment the alarm died. The timestamp stayed. The screen went dark for 2 seconds. I rewound it and watched that dark over and over. I called the precinct. 2 officers came, polite and tired. They took the flash drive and my statement. They said to document everything. One said, "We can't do much unless something criminal happens." I left with a sheet of paper and a hollow feeling. Then photos arrived. Me through the vapor of a cigarette. Me unlocking my apartment. Each shot taken from under the streetlight across the road. Timestamps matched my nights. I showed them to the officers. They looked at the pictures and said, "We can't prove harassment if no laws were clearly broken." It was true on paper. Neighbors began to avoid my eyes. He would help an elderly woman with groceries and people praised him. He became a quiet fixture. That made it worse. He was polite in public and private in the cracks. I saw him where he should not be. On trains I thought were empty. At a bus stop I never used. Once he handed my sister Sapphire a candy bar and said her name. She dropped it and ran. She told me his voice felt like someone close behind her. I called the police again. They logged it. He never stole. He never broke in. He never said much. He slid into places where law and proof did not reach. He made small moves that left large doubts. I started locking the chain every night. I changed my route. I still found photos I had not taken. The worst night had rain that sounded like small stones. I was closing alone. At 2:50 a.m., I locked the front. At 3:12 a.m., he came in and bought the usual. I went to check the back and saw the service door open an inch. The latch was down. I called Leon. He said he'd be there. He was late. I watched the street. Under the single streetlight, a figure stood and waited. The CCTV showed that 2-second blackout again when the alarm died weeks before. The man under the light looked straight at the glass like he could see me. Leon arrived, and the man was gone. Later, a note slipped under Sapphire's door. It smelled like tobacco and read, "Nice seeing you. No prints, no camera." The police wrote it down and told us to keep records. I stopped taking night shifts. Keziah moved out. Sapphire stayed at a neighbor's for a bit. I shopped in daylight. I crossed Elm when I could. Once I walked past and he stood under the light, sipping from a paper cup, smiling. The smile did not reach his eyes. The officers were not mean. They did their jobs. They said they needed a clear crime. He had learned that. He folded his actions into tiny legal spaces and left the big things empty. He took up the corners of my life until those corners did not fit. One night, after the note, I did something dumb. I went back to the store at midnight to check the back room. I brought a cheap flashlight and an extra lock I bought online. Leon said I was being dramatic when I showed him the lock. "You look like a crazy person," he said, and laughed, and I felt stupid. I locked the service door and sat until dawn, sipping bad coffee. I did not call the police right away because I wanted proof. When I called later, the officer asked why I waited. I mumbled that I wanted to be sure. The extra lock did not stop the photos on my phone. It only made me feel like I was doing something, even if it did not help. I felt ashamed. There was no dramatic end, no arrest, no confrontation that solved it. Just photos with timestamps, a dark 2 seconds on camera, a folded note, and a man who knew my sister's name. Once I saw him and shouted, "Why are you following me?" He smiled wider and said, "I like watching." I said one bad word at him, "Motherfucker," and he did not look back. He walked off into the rain like nothing had happened. I still check the chain. I still forget small things. Sometimes I think I will go back to nights when I need the money. Sometimes I think I will never stand under that light again. I don't know what he wanted. I only know that the police could not help me when laws did not cover a feeling. The worst part is that he never had to do anything dramatic. He just rearranged my days and left the rest up to silence. Listen up, because this one is the kind of thing that makes you think twice about trusting people in your own neighborhood. It all started with a simple volunteer cleanup in late summer, but it ended with me realizing how one guy could take over an entire street without anyone lifting a finger against him. The police showed up, listened, and then basically said there was nothing they could do. Crazy, right? My name is Dax Harrow, and this happened to me in my old neighborhood in Akron, Ohio. It was a normal place with families and older folks just trying to get by. I lived there for 10 years before all this. I worked at a warehouse loading boxes, so coming home was my time to relax. Anyway, it began in late summer when the neighborhood volunteer group organized a block cleanup. We got together at the community center one Saturday morning. That's when this man from the old brick house offered to coordinate the schedule. He had keys to the community center and a stack of printed rosters. His manner made everyone trust him instantly. He introduced himself with an easy laugh and a background in community outreach. The guy was named Lorne Vexley. Over months he ran errands, checked in on the elderly across the street, and even drove a neighbor to the DMV. I remember one afternoon I was out mowing my lawn. The grass was getting long because I kept forgetting to do it on time with my busy schedule. Lorne pulled up and helped me finish the backyard without me even asking. Nice guy, right? People loved him for stuff like that. Then things started happening in small ways. A teenager named Jetta Ryan stopped coming to practice when Lorne offered to help with rides. The kid was a good soccer player too. His mom used to cheer loud at games. He just kind of vanished from the team. No one thought much of it at first. Then a woman named Marlo Finch, who mentioned Lorne at a PTA meeting, found her social invitations quietly rescinded. She told me about it one day when we bumped into each other at the store. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept much. When I raised concerns that someone was taking advantage of vulnerable neighbors, others called me paranoid. They reminded me of his volunteer hours and how he fixed that broken fence for Mr. Alden Crow last month. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was seeing things because my job at the warehouse was wearing me down. I even skipped a few group meetings after that because it felt awkward. Later, I found out Lorne had access to a binder of personal information. Phone numbers, emergency contacts, medical notes, you name it. All because residents signed that binder in trust during the cleanup. I saw it by accident when I stopped by the center to return some gloves I borrowed. It was sitting there open, and I glanced inside. My own info was in there too, along with notes. That made me uneasy, but I didn't say anything right away. I reported the misuse to the police and to the charity that sponsored the group. They conducted a review and concluded the binder was for administrative purposes. Removing it would hamper outreach, they said. The cops were polite when they came to my house, but nothing changed after their visit. Lorne used the binder to manipulate situations. He appeared at exactly the right moment to rescue people from minor crises he engineered. Like someone's car wouldn't start, and there he was with jumper cables ready. Phone lines rerouted, meetings canceled, people shamed into silence. The official line was always accidental oversight, but the damage was private and precise. One evening, I went to his house to confront him. The old brick place looked normal from outside, but inside it was too organized with everything in its place. He opened the door and laughed that same laugh. "Dax, what brings you here at this hour?" I told him I knew about the binder and the tricks. He just smiled and mentioned details from my life that only the binder would have, like my allergy to certain meds and how I had back issues. How the hell did he remember that? This shit made my skin crawl, but I kept calm and left soon after. I called the police one more time. They took statements from me and a couple others who felt the same. They smiled and told us to be patient. Officers who came said things like, "Be patient. These community issues take time." No arrest, no real help at all. My neighbors started keeping their distance after that, like they didn't want to get involved or get on Lorne's bad side. I sat on my porch a lot those days just thinking. In the end, he didn't need to show force. He held the paperwork and the goodwill, and those two things were enough to keep an entire street under his control. While the officers who came to take statements smiled and told us to be patient. I moved away 6 months later, sold the house quick and got out of Akron for good. But I still get messages from old friends there now and then. They say Lorne is still running the volunteer group bigger than ever. Everyone trusts him like before. I wonder if anyone else has tried to speak up and got shut down the same way. The police couldn't help us back then, and probably wouldn't now either. Makes you think what else is going on in neighborhoods just like mine. Sometimes I drive by the old block when I'm in town for work. I see that brick house still standing there with lights on like nothing ever happened. It leaves you with this feeling that it's not over. Not really. Someone else might be next and they won't even know it until it's too late. You never know.